Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Other Minds and Hands. This is a very special episode of Other Minds and Hands. I'm joined, of course, as always, by my co-host, Maggie Parke, and we are delighted to join you to tell you a little bit more about our fun trip last week. We were, both of us were in London at the end of last week, invited by the Amazon Prime Video folks to come to their London event, and they did this whole sneak preview event where, as you've probably seen if you've been on the internet at all in the last 24 hours, you've probably seen that there were a number of people there. And I see Will is here. Good to see you, Will. Good to meet you too. There's that was, by the way, before we even talk about the rest of the stuff, you know, Maggie, I have to admit, it's honestly my favorite part of the whole session was getting to hang out for several days with all of these other awesome Tolkien people.
Yeah. This little community that they accidentally built, and what has followed, because now we're all on this WhatsApp chat group together, and like there's hundreds of messages a day that I think this is like the biggest risk of Amazon and possibly the greatest power, because they built this community and here we are without them now completely flourishing.
Yeah. Yes, I think it will probably be a net good for them, but it is true. It is a dangerous thing that they have built, because now, anyway, but it was awesome. I mean, the time that I had getting to meet folks whom I've seen. There's some folks that I interacted with before, you know, done interviews before, we'd talk to each other in sort of official places online, and there are other people that I'd been talking to for a while but had never seen in person. There were others that I didn't know of at all, and just got to meet for the first time. My favorite subgroup there was I had a really wonderful time hanging out with who I called the cool kids, namely the TikTok group. They were awesome. There was some really fun times. They helped me create my own TikTok channel, which I totally have now, by the way. I have not really posted except for the one video I made in the and by the way, the one video I have posted, I didn't even know I was doing it. Don was showing me how to use TikTok, and then he's like this, and he hits the record button, and he's like, "Hi, we're live," and I'm like, "Oh, hi." Anyway, it was great.
How Corey became a TikTok sensation. And from an outsider perspective too, because obviously like I'm aware of a lot of these groups, but I'm not super imbued in them. I mean, I went to the OneRing.net back in 2002 with the rest of us and checked it every day for new and updates and stuff. But it was so different being in this crowd and being aware of fandom and being aware of how these guys interact, but then being thrown into the deep end. And first of all, I had to have somebody next to me, James from Signum, who was pointing out who everyone was to me. So I had like my own little like guide of like, this is this person, this is, and then we all knew each other within 24 hours. But also just seeing everybody flock to you. Like, it was just so fascinating of like, I don't want to like over-egg the pudding or anything like that. It's not like they put you on a pedestal, but you've been around for so long that you are such a calming and common presence to everybody that it was just like, there were these TikTokers that were early 20s that were like, I've been listening to you for a decade, and now here I am in a pub sharing a pint with you talking about Tolkien. Like, you could just see the like moments
it was
around
very
you.
fun. And also I was feeling pretty old a lot of last week, as I mean, it's like the double edge, right, of meeting people who are like, I've been listening to you since I was 13, and I'm like, whoa, I'm old. But yeah,
but also like, to me, you're just Corey, so it's just so nice to be in this crowd that's like, oh my god, the Tolkien Professor in person, and it was really fun. So thoroughly enjoyed it.
And it's so much. I mean, I tease about being made to feel old. I never mind feeling old. Getting old is kind of fun, actually, and it's so much fun to see the next generation of people, kind of coming up, and seeing these new people who are doing these exciting things. And again, especially I was talking to the TikTok folks, because they felt, I think they were feeling a little bit self-conscious in the sense that their platform, TikTok, is still like this, new thing that a lot of people don't take seriously. And so I think they were feeling a little bit self-conscious about that. And I was just like, man, yeah, like welcome to podcasting 12 years ago, right? That was
Right.
exactly podcasting
Right.
12 years ago. And so, I was able to kind of, from having been around a long time, say, like 12 years from now, you'll be meeting people who have like, I've been watching you on TikTok since I was 13 years old. and like that's going to be where you guys are going to be. Anyway, it was fun. It's always fun to do that. And that was a really great opportunity. Not to mention that, I got an opportunity to talk rap with New Betta Do Betta, which was like one of the highlights of my entire trip.
I wish somebody had recorded that entire thing and we can make t-shirts. Like it was just
the dude started freestyling in the middle of, and I'm like, forget it. Holy cow, this is fantastic. Anyway, no, it was excellent. But anyway, so yeah, it was just a fantastic community, and we had so many wonderful conversations. I mean, and there were just a whole bunch of times when, it was just really neat. Like look at this. We're sitting around the table with, with the Prancing Pony hosts, both of the Prancing Pony hosts and the, chair of the Tolkien Society and, the Nerd of the Rings and the
Tolkien Talk guys from Brazil.
Tolkien Talk guys from Brazil. I mean, and just, all talking about whatever
he was Tolkien. Yeah, I mean all these people and like all the collaborations that were discussed too. So like I think over the next couple of months you're going to see loads of people on other people's shows and platforms and stuff too, because we're all like, yeah, come talk about that. I want to talk to you about this, and Absolutely. It should be good fun for content.
Yeah, for sure. We're hoping to have Sergio and Cesar from Tolkien Talk in Brazil on Other Minds in Hands soon. Maybe even as soon as next episode. We'll see if what we can arrange, but soon. In any case, so that was again one of the really cool things to hear more from them about just kind of like Tolkien fandom in Brazil. It was like this whole sort of other world that was really fascinating to hear about. So anyway, so looking forward to lots more conversation and collaboration. As you say, conversation is ongoing among us. But that's been really great fun. Well, we wanted to share with you our responses to the event. Well, first of all, let me explain what happened, right? We'll kind of give you the whole overview of the thing. They brought us to London, and then the first thing we did, we had like one fun day and one work day, basically. The fun day, they took us to Oxford, and we did lots of really fun Tolkien tourist things in Oxford, which was really cool. Included, it was kind of highlighted by, they brought in John Garth to give a Tolkien talk. And it was really funny because, they had not told us about John Garth's talk, but I was coming out of the loo and passed him going the other way, and I was like, John, good to see you. And I was walking with one of the Amazon people, and I was like, oh, hang on, I want to say hi to him. And she's like, and she actually hadn't actually met him before, so she didn't recognize him on sight. She's like, wait, who's that? I'm like, it's John Garth. And she's like, oh. And so I went over to like, hi, John. And then I was there, and then Sean and Alan from the Prancing Pony came by, and they were, because they've met him before too. And anyway, and then Sean Gunner came by from the Tolkien Society, and we were all chatting and stuff. It was really, and then the Amazon people were like, well, I guess the cat's kind of out of the bag about what's coming after lunch. But
they hadn't told him who he was doing this to, right? Like,
no,
they hadn't told John that he
right. So he sees me and Sean and Alan and Sean, and he was like, maybe I need to revise my talk, and we're like, it's okay.
He's like, he's like, I probably don't need to do the introduction card of who is Tolkien.
right, yeah. No, it was good.
Yeah.
It was. The
fun. Oxford Day was just beautiful too. I mean, it was like some of the most stunning scenery, and I have a friend that worked in admissions at Oxford, and she said the spaces we had access to nobody has access to. So I mean, they were clearly pulling out all the stops to make sure we saw the best of Oxford, and beautiful tablescapes and wonderful meals, and all that kind of visual stuff that you want to kind of create that ambiance and that atmosphere. So they totally nailed that bit.
Yeah.
But
Oh
we
yeah.
also just had a really lovely day. We just
Yeah.
geeked out about Tolkien, and it was beautiful. So that was really helpful to just have a
Yeah.
nice
Oh
day
my
out.
goodness. We got this like incredibly perfect weather that you could
Yeah,
never
yeah, so
expect.
surreal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. It was,
It
so
rained for
yeah.
about 4 minutes the first night, and that was it.
Yeah. That was really amazing. And, yeah, so anyway, so that was kind of, as I say, the fun day, and we could tell you stories about our Oxford trip, but it was mostly touristy and fun for the opportunity to get to hang out with each other. Then Friday was when the real business went down, and the first thing that happened was they showed us the sneak peek. It wasn't much. We saw some clips. Basically, it was relatively short. It was pretty substantial compared to what has been seen so far, but it was certainly left me very interested to see more. And it also means, by the way, one of the things that so we can get, obviously we can't tell you details about what we saw. We promised we wouldn't reveal the details about what we saw. But we are allowed to tell you what we thought of things in general, and happy to answer questions about that. The question I have the hardest, I'll just tell you in advance, the question I have the hardest time answering, even in general terms, about are like story questions, like big picture story questions, because we only got bits. And so I can't really, we didn't really see enough to get a sense of like, oh, I feel good about where the story's going and how, things are being pulled together. We didn't see enough to be able to draw any conclusions about that. So just to warn you in advance, big picture questions about the story, we're not going to be able to sort of help with. But there were some things, that we were able to do. Meow, you're right that often the NDAs prevent people from even saying that they saw anything. But I mean, this is clearly the strategy. They want us to talk about it. So it is an unusual kind of NDA, right? It's an NDA where they do want us to be careful not to reveal too many things. There are some things that they're trying to not reveal, but at the same time they are encouraging us to talk about it at the same time. So it's in some ways kind of a fine line to walk, and we're trying to be respectful. Actually, I should probably play our video before I talk anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say,
because
we talk about NDAs and that, so let's do that, and then we'll keep.
So the video I'm going to show you right now, this is, and I apologize in advance, it's really low res. We just kind of quick recorded it on Zoom on a laptop in the hotel room, and so it was it's low quality, but we wanted to record something right away to give, even though we didn't have high-tech equipment with us on the spot, unlike the TikTokers and the Nerd of the Rings. But anyway, I just so we're going to show you, because we wanted to show, this was recorded like half an hour after we got out from the meeting. Oh wait, hang on. I didn't even finish saying what happened. Okay, so sneak preview. We saw the sneak preview. Then they brought the showrunners forward, and we got to hear from the showrunners. And this was like, by far, biggest deal of the day.
We didn't need to see any footage. We could have just had that.
We could have just had that, and I'd been happy.
Fine.
Yeah. I'd be saying almost exactly the same things I'm saying now.
Yeah.
So they, talked, had a very sort of spontaneous back and forth. And then we got to ask a whole bunch of questions, and they were responding to us. And then after that, we got to meet with them in the hall. We all kind of went out into the lobby and got to meet with them in smaller groups and ask individual questions and have a much freer thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and for a long time. I asked multiple questions to both of them and had time to wander around, and it was a lot of time.
Yeah, it was it was like, I didn't even know how much, it was like an hour almost that we had
At
in the
least,
lobby with them.
I think it was more.
Yeah, it was a substantial amount of time we got to talk with them. So anyway, right after all that was done, Maggie and I went up to a hotel room and recorded this so that we could kind of record our impressions on the spot. So here's our thoughts. Again, apologize, it's kind of a low res video, but it's just the two of us sitting on a couch, so it's the visuals aren't really the important thing.
You can enjoy the immediate, just
you can enjoy the immediate
carefully.
And then we'll kind of comment on it, and we'd be happy to try to answer whatever questions we have. If we're happy to address stuff that we can. Again, obviously we're not going to tell details, but we can talk about stuff. So here we go.
Okay, so for posterity, we're doing this. Corey and I are in the same city because a thing just happened.
That's right. Thing just happened.
What happened, Corey?
So we're here in London. We were invited to an event by the Amazon Prime people to do a sneak peek of the show and to get to meet the showrunners, which was by far my favorite part.
Pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
So we can go over the rough structure of the 2 days, can't we?
I think so. Of course, needless to say, we had to, sign a thing saying that we wouldn't, there's a bunch of things we're not supposed to talk about and all that kind of thing, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, even that, I feel like we should say something about, although we were like, we're just going to do a quick little thing.
Right.
But like, there's this coyness about like what you're allowed to share, and right. I feel like a lot of the times it's just very like, I know something you don't know, and I have to say it doesn't feel that way with this.
Right.
It feels
right.
more like curated, and I respect curated. They're
right.
just careful about what's coming out, and
they have a sequence in which they want to release things, and that's I can respect that too.
Yeah, it's part of their own creative process, and you wouldn't want somebody to read a draft of your final essay for your penultimate
right.
senior project in college,
right.
like they want somebody to kind of take a minute. So yeah, so we were invited here to see some sites around Oxford and to experience what Tolkien, his life, and then to meet with showrunners and see some footage and have a Q&A today.
And people who are, it's not just us, right? I mean, it's been folks from across the internet. We've been hanging out with, folks from, Nerd of the Rings,
Prancing Pony
guys, Tolkien Society, folks from internationally, the guys from Tolkien Talk down in Brazil, people from Spain and in Germany, all over the place. So,
and I have to say my happiest part of that is what a lovely little community this has been in such a short amount of time.
Yes.
Different fandoms have different vibes, and this one just feels very like sharing.
Yes.
That's probably the word I would put on it most. Everyone's quite happy for everyone else to have information. There's not that like egotistical, I know more than you do, you know, that you really find in a lot of fandoms. So that gathering has been lovely, but also incredibly unique. Like, when do you get the top hitters of every single fan site in the same location?
Yeah. And different media too, from like, TikTok. We got to actually meet, Dubetta, who was fantastic.
Willie Jenkins, who was on our show a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, he was great. I got to meet, Don and Emily, 2 other TikTokers. It's been great. It's been great.
And loads of people that will be on in weeks to come.
Yeah, people we plan to have as future guests. That's been, it's been really wonderful to get to meet them and hang out. We've been kind of all sort of having this experience together, and it's been really fun, though it makes me feel old.
You are amongst the longer.
Yes.
There was a bit yesterday where they had us kind of say what our favorite part of the day was, and there was more than one person that said, "I remember being 13 years old and listening to the Tolkien Professor."
Yeah.
But that was also so beautiful because the end of that sentence was, "And now I'm sitting in a pub that Tolkien went to having a beer with you." It was such a beautiful moment.
As you say, it's a really fun community, and it's neat because on the one hand you might think you get together a bunch of like the top content creators on different, and you might think there would be like competition or jockeying for place or one-upsmanship or that kind of thing. There's really been none of that at all.
There was definitely some high-level conversation. Like you could tell you were all like so glad to be around like-minded people where you could deep dive real fast without giving context, and that was fun to listen to. But
absolutely,
and it was fun to get wrapped up in all of the activity. But I also had this like adaptation industry fan management thing going on in the back of my mind, and I just kept pulling Amazon people aside and saying, "This is beautifully done." Like, yes, it's a PR activity. Yes, we understand that Amazon is sponsoring this, but they're doing it really well. And I don't just mean schmoozy. I mean respecting the knowledge in the room.
Yes.
The longevity of the community. The knowledge that everybody has and the knowledge that the showrunners brought into the room, I think was my favorite moment.
Oh man,
so we should probably mention that.
Yeah. No, and I just quickly though to add on to that, I did feel very much that they, again, there's this sort of attitude in,
out there, right? That, Amazon is like wanting to like control all of these things. They seemed really genuinely interested to listen and to hear from us and to know what we thought and what questions we had and what concerns we had and what we'd been hearing. That I was, that's one of the things I think that impressed me most about, getting to meet some of the, of course, we've been mostly spending time with the folks in the PR department, people who were doing promotions, but again, they were very interested. But as you say, let's talk about meeting the showrunners, which was amazing.
Which we've talked about before. I mean, my preconception was these big Hollywood types that I don't know personally, so I was optimistic but completely uninformed. And I would say within 4 minutes of their conversation, you could feel the sigh of relief in the room.
Oh my goodness.
They could
match
knowledge with anybody in that room.
I mean, it was not only the genuineness of their passion, but the depth of their knowledge. It was, I have the uttermost respect for those guys now. And I just, the thing that I would say to anybody is, like, if you are worried about the show, if you're afraid that this show is going to be like doing damage to Tolkien, that they're just, going to be dragging the name of Tolkien through the dirt, that this is just some man, like, if you just listen, someday you'll get a chance. They'll be doing interviews and stuff. Someday you'll get a chance to hear these guys talking. When you do, like, I defy anybody to listen to these guys talk for more than 2 minutes and not feel like these are our people. This is. Yeah,
that's the way I would say it. Like, these are our people. Like, that doesn't mean you're going to love the show. Like, you're still totally allowed to have whatever opinion you have, because every adaptation falls differently on whatever audience. But just the assurance I had of, like, these guys know their stuff.
Absolutely.
And I don't just mean read the Cliff Notes before walking in.
Uh-oh. A little glitch here.
What was said, but
there were some testing questions.
There were some hardcore quotations they were popping out with.
And references to letters. I mean, they knew numbers. Letters and
they knew very obscure notes. Yeah, they absolutely know their stuff. And again, it's very clear that they are absolutely text first. I mean, I couldn't feel more confident now in saying how certain, again, I don't know how it's going to turn out. It may be, who knows, maybe the show will fail of achieving the vision that they're trying to capture. But I 100% believe, after hearing from them, that the vision that they have is utterly grounded in the text, and just based on a real passion for the text that was so inspiring to see. I mean, it was really funny. You talked about the room. You could feel it.
Yeah.
Like, within the first 5 minutes, when the showrunner started talking, everybody in the room was just like, oh.
It was like, there were like tears and laughter, and people were so relieved.
It was just such an unbelievable, again, I said, someday the day will come later. It is not to this day when I can tell you more about exactly the things that they said. But there were so many times when the answers to questions they asked were so far beyond my wildest expectations.
Yeah.
Again, not saying, this is not to say anything about the quality of the show. This is just to say
they did their research, that
they knew what they were talking about, that their hearts are in the right place, that their sense of Tolkien and Tolkien's importance and I hear and I have heard and totally understood the concern that people have had about, like, do they get Tolkien?
Yeah.
Are they gonna mess it up? Do they understand the themes of Tolkien? And I can just say, like, again, I don't know how the show's gonna come out, but man, do they get it? Yes, they get it.
And that's, of course, the biggest fear, because this is something we care about, and you have creative control over it. So if you muck this up, I'm gonna be real peeved.
Yeah.
And again, I can hear the naysayers being like, but this is a PR stunt. They're clearly just kind of schmoozing and saying what they're supposed to say. Sure, you could say that. You could say that these guys have gotten their PR directive and are playing nice and making sure that they're interested in asking us a lot of questions and being really kind. You cannot train that level of
You can't fake
knowledge
that.
into somebody.
No, I've spent 15 years talking to Tolkien fans. You cannot fake what those guys have.
And the way they were talking about industry as well. I mean, the way they were talking about how they had to pitch themselves to be showrunners. It was a 6-month audition, and there was everything on the table. So they talked about all the other things that Amazon was considering, and all the other ideas, and all the other people at the table that were basically pitching to Amazon, saying, "Here's what we should do." And here they were saying, "Here's our idea." And they deep dove into this gap in Tolkien lore and proposed a believable, based on a nugget of truth, way that you could explain that gap.
Yeah.
And it made sense. So like the work that they had to put in to get the job and then to deliver. Yeah, it was very reassuring.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, it was, and again, everybody, I mean, everyone I talked to, you know, almost everybody, all the other, you know, content folks afterwards. And everybody had exactly the same reaction. It's funny because we had just been shown a sneak peek of the show, right? We were all really looking forward to that. And afterwards, nobody was talking about it. Everyone was talking about meeting the people, right?
Because that's the real concern. Like, I think everybody's going to interpret the show how they interpret the show. And you either like it or you don't. You would engage with those characters in that story arc or you don't. But the core of our concern was, do they care? Are they one of us?
Yeah.
And I think everyone feels better.
Yeah. And I will say, by the way, for the record, I liked it. Like, what I saw, I liked. Like, we can't talk too much, details about it, but
I'm happy.
It's going to be spectacular. It's really going to be spectacular. I was impressed. We'll see. You know, there were so many questions. There's so many things, but
the takeaway is. And just pretty, the visuals pretty,
pretty, and but the biggest news. And again, this is the message. This is the news. Is just don't worry. Like, it's, you know, maybe you'll like it, maybe you won't like it, but I am completely confident that this project is in excellent hands from a Tolkien fan perspective.
And if you had asked me yesterday, I would have said, well, yeah, this is a great PR exercise, and they're doing so well. Like, I'm so impressed in the fan management, fan engagement side of things, of how they've put this together and what freedom they've given us creatively and all of that stuff. But it was today that I was like, oh, dang. Oh, you just upped the bar, because those two people are the people that need to be in charge of this.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really, and again, I know it's hard to kind of, and I'd never heard of these guys before. I knew nothing about them. And so I was in the same place that everybody else is, of just like hearing, okay, they hired these two people almost nobody's ever heard of. And what reason do we possibly have to think that, you know,
we should trust them with
should trust them. Yeah, exactly. That, and, you know, I know that, you know, there was this process back in the days of the Peter Jackson film of kind of discovering Peter Jackson's own passion and the passion about people like Philip Boyens and the other people involved in the project. And then, of course, you saw that in the appendices and everything, right, of the DVDs and stuff. So, you know, there was this kind of process of coming to respect and trust. Yeah. Even though there might be things you don't like, there might be things you disagree with, but yet everybody knew. Even people who didn't like the films knew that the films were in the hands of people who were really doing their best to honor Tolkien.
And how revolutionary was that? You know, I mean, the fact that they shared their process with us back then. So I'm also comforted that these guys, I don't know if they've learned or it's just natural to their own life, because they were so influenced by the Jackson films. So they were talking about, you know, that really piqued their interest as well as filmmakers, young filmmakers at the time, but sharing their process. And that is something I hope comes out soon, because obviously Amazon has been very tight with what they're sharing information wise. But once they start sharing, it's going to be so reassuring. I wish they had started sharing already, because it would have stopped a lot of the concern I think our community has had.
Exactly. Which has been very understandable concern. But again, you know I can't say anything to prove it to you other than just trust me. Like, these guys know, you know, they know their stuff and they love it as much as you do. And again, you might not always agree with them. Who knows? You know, who knows what we'll think.
But also soon we'll be able to, you know? So like, that's the other fun thing. Like, once we're allowed to start sharing more, like, we now have this font of knowledge that we can then pull in a clip that they have released and be like, okay, guys, here's what we can tell you about it. And, and won't that be fun that they shared so much with us and shared so openly with us? So it's very exciting.
Very exciting. Very exciting. So I have a new confidence going forward. I will confess that I have had this seed of doubt not grounded on anything, but because of the absence of information. That there's been a part of me, as I've been saying, and I've been saying without hesitation, let's give it the benefit of the doubt. Let's not prejudge. Let's see. It may, your fears may not be well-founded, but I cannot deny that there has been that inner part of me that has said, but what if they are well-founded?
Right, yeah, but there's this but self-preservation. I have to keep you here because I'm also a little bit scared.
Exactly.
I've just felt totally removed from it. I haven't felt the need to engage because there's nothing to engage with yet. And now all of a sudden I'm like, oh, we're on the same team. Like, I hope this is good.
I hope this is good too. Yeah. I mean, and everything I've seen suggests that it is going to be very good. But yeah, I mean, we'll judge the final product by the final product. But yes, that doubt, that concern, that that I would be saying, oh no, like, don't just jump to the conclusion that it's a soulless, corporate production and give the benefit of the doubt, and then is it going to actually turn out to be a soulless corporate production?
Right. Please no.
Exactly. Please no. Yeah. Right. That's been kind of the deep at the root of it. But
the thing we kept saying was there's humans behind this, and now we've gotten to know the humans a little bit more.
Humans. Yeah.
And the humans had to work so hard to get this done, and have given 4.5 years of their life to this already, and are so imbued in the lore.
And just so passionate about Tolkien.
Yeah.
And that's not just about their story, not just about which they are, which is great. You want them to be passionate about the story that they're telling and the movie that they're, the films they're making, but genuinely passionate about Tolkien, and they get it. I mean, they get it. They get Tolkien in lots of ways, which, as they say, you can't fake. So again, I know it is easy to be like, well, we came away thinking just what they wanted us to think,
right?
Which is true, but at the same time, you can't fake that.
Yeah, that's the line I'm just going to keep coming back to. These 2 days were super Amazon curated.
Right.
It was schmoozy. We can all take a step back and understand that, but you cannot fake the hours that we had this afternoon with that. And you could scrap the rest of this trip, and if we just had that takeaway, we'd be like, awesome.
Yeah. And again, I am so excited for when the time comes, in the process, right, when they're able to do interviews and they're and you guys are able to hear from them. You are going to love what you hear from them. Trust me, you're gonna love that.
I hope they just let them go, because that's what they did today.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And there was no reeling in from anybody else. They just let them go, and they just talked, and it was great, because it was fantastic. All of us gathering around a table, and nobody could talk fast enough. It was just so much information.
Oh my goodness.
But Amazon didn't stand a chance of reeling them in. It was great.
I found myself literally on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. There was one point I thought you were crying. I'm just saying.
I did tear up a little bit. There is,
and it was not at something that you would think. It was, it was quite a geeky academic detail.
Well, okay, some people watching this would think.
Or true. Our community knows you.
I bet you guys could guess.
Yeah,
actually.
It was great. So, in terms of I can take a step back and look at it analytically and say, what a great fan management exercise. But in the same breath, it's but you can't fake that.
Yeah, you can't.
This is not a media press pack. This is true passion and knowledge.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay.
Until next time.
Okay.
I'm just realizing now how much we repeated ourselves, and it's
it's okay.
That was pure enthusiasm, people.
Pure enthusiasm, exactly. That's why that was in the moment. Let me address a couple of questions that came up while that video was running. First, I want to talk about the corporate shill thing. Because there's an angle on this, by the way, that nobody else has thought of. Everyone's taking for granted, which, if you think about it, is ridiculous. and that people are saying like, oh, I trust that and I'm flattered by the people who say that they believe that I wouldn't lie, that I wouldn't accept money to lie about something, which is true. I wouldn't accept money to lie about something. But here's the other thing. I suck at lying. I could never pull it off. Like, seriously, if people tried, and that group of people, right? There is no way that you could pull together a group of like 30 people like that, none of whom are professional actors.
Yeah, and who their entire job is based on their own opinions being shared honestly. Like,
right, and being able to just like share spontaneously with your community, like it wouldn't happen. It can't happen. No. I mean, I'm trying to think like if somebody were to if somebody were to offer a large sum of money to be like, we want you to promote something that this is one of the reasons. Well, there are several reasons. This is one of the reasons why I've never taken ads on my podcast. Like, I don't think I could even force myself to be like, and now I want to tell you about this awesome product that like I don't even like. Like, I could not do it. I don't think. I mean, I suck. I mean, ask my wife. I suck at like faking feelings that I don't have, or putting on that kind of a show. Like, what I do, what I've always done, what always my broadcasting has always been about, has been like sharing spontaneous enthusiasm, right? And when I try to fake it, when I try to wump up enthusiasm for something I don't have, and especially if I were to try to fake something that I'm not enthusiastic about at all, or that I dislike, but I'm trying to pretend I like it, oh man, like, let me just tell you how easy it would be for any of you, even people who don't know me would smell it. Those of you who know me well would see it a mile away. I couldn't possibly do it. So it just so even apart from the fact that it would be a ridiculous plan of theirs to even attempt to do that, and I wouldn't do that, it wouldn't work even if those two things weren't true. It's just a crazy, ridiculous thing.
And one of the things I did love about yes, there's a lot of chat here about NDAs and things like that. So obviously there's things we can't say, but they want us to share reactions and thoughts and stuff. But like, they also weren't censoring in any way. They never asked us to be kind. They just said, please share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, several of us were at several points explicitly told, like, if you think it's crap, you can say it's crap. Like, you're not obligated to not say it's crap.
Which is such a brave move from them to get all of us together, and it could have backfired so hard. I saw somebody earlier in the chat saying how brave or bold it must have been to have those showrunners up, and I was like, oh no, they knew what they had. Like, those guys can hang. Those guys could match. So they had no fear about putting those guys in front of us. They were just excited. I mean, if that was the mood that I would have to put on it, I would say they were as enthusiastic and excited as we were to be in that room, because everyone geeked out as fast and as hard as they could. Yeah. And it was just so much chatter. It was great.
Yeah. No, exactly. So that's just one. I just wanted to acknowledge that people often forget this. This, by the way, is the same reason that I disbelieve most government conspiracy theories. Not because I think the government wouldn't do it, but because I don't believe them sufficiently competent to pull off most of the things that people suspect them of doing. And very much that applies here. Just saying. Another question that I saw come up that I wanted to try to answer, because I think I can answer it in general terms, was asking me what kinds of questions did I ask, right? And I had decided, I thought about this a bit before we met them, like, okay, so what am I going to ask? And in general terms, I decided, of course, the immediate temptation is to try to dig for information, like to answers to the questions that I have about how things are going to be handled or what's going on. By the way, you'll be amused to know that, you guys who have been watching this show will remember our conversation with New Better Do Better and our conversation about Gilgalad and his parentage. He totally asked the showrunners that question. He raised his hand and he's like, okay, Gilgalad. I looked over at him and I was like, yeah, ask the Gilgalad question. It was awesome. But I decided I wasn't going to fish for information like that, mostly because I was pretty sure they weren't going to answer very specific questions like that, that they weren't going to give us whole bunches of spoilers. And they generally didn't. They actually were a little bit more forthcoming than I expected them to be, but they didn't give us a whole lot of spoilery answers to questions like that. But I decided we're not allowed to tell you, Phil, exactly what they answered. But anyway, what I decided when I went into it and was thinking about my own questioning was, I decided the very first thing I wanted to try to assess was their own feeling for Tolkien, their own enthusiasm for Tolkien. Like, do they know and love Tolkien? Was the first question, general question they wanted answered. So I was preparing to kind of ask them some general questions to try to fish for that. And it turns out I never did, because I could see it within 60 seconds of them opening their mouths, and I didn't have to ask the question. By the time it came to Q&A, I didn't have that question anymore. The second thing my first thing I wanted to know was, do they know Tolkien? Do they love Tolkien? Does this really matter to them? The second thing that I wanted to know was, do they get Tolkien? Which is not the same thing, right? Because you can be enthusiastic, but also clueless and kind of missing the point. And if they were missing the point in sort of alarming ways, then that would have been disquieting, right? That, like, we could be heading for some kind of disaster. And I felt really good. I felt really good about that. I will tell you, again, I can't tell you the details of their answer, but I will tell you the question, and I will tell you how satisfied I was with their answer. That's the best I can do. The question was, and I think it was Alan Sisto who asked the question, talk about the themes. What are some of the themes that are going to be really important in the show? And the answers that they gave, first of all, they couched it completely in, like, we went to the text and we were looking at what are some of the major and most important themes in Tolkien's work, and how can we bring those out over the course of our story. And then they went through and listed boom, 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 4 or 5 different themes. And I was just like, tearing up listening to them.
I think we would have been hard pressed to be as eloquent as they were as well.
Oh my goodness!
So thoughtful and cut you to the core answers that by the end we were like, great.
Yeah. I mean, even the there was one in the context of that answer. Patrick McKay dropped like what his favorite passage of the Lord of the Rings was, and I'm just like, okay.
Verbatim.
Okay. You have me. You have me. Anyway, so that was their answer to that question, was one of the answers that was just, again, like, beyond my wildest dreams what I hoped to hear from them. Like, as is it with those questions. Do they know and love Tolkien? Do they get and really understand Tolkien? I had a kind of a variety of possible outcomes in my mind. There was like, alarm, concern, uncertainty, and then, optimism, confidence. And I was just like, I'm like, this is, as good as I could have asked. I mean, it was fantastic. It was just, so I felt so. That probably, of all things, that answer to that question was probably for me the most reassuring moment, because again, you can know, it was awesome to know that they knew the text backward and forward. And again, I don't think it's transgressing our NDA to tell you general things like they quoted from Tolkien's letters from memory, alluded to others, which I couldn't quote from memory myself. And these were not just like the famous letters, but some obscure ones. There was a moment when one of them, in the course of answering a question, quoted one of Christopher's footnotes to like volume 11 of the History of Middle-earth. They know their stuff. They know their stuff really, really well. But again, you can know it and not like get it, not have a really good sort of sensibility of it, but they did. Exactly. As Will says, Will from the That Varking podcast, the dwarf guy, Will was there too. And he said, like, they finished sentences. Like, we would start something and they would finish our sentence for us. They were,
and there were definitely, and there were definitely 2 or 3 points where, like, you could tell the person asking the question was judging the knowledge of, and they rose to the occasion and didn't need to play that game. Really quickly, it was like, we know our stuff. It's fine.
So absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think most of my questions were all about creativity and freedom and things like that, because we are talking about, you know, an Amazon adaptation, and there is that kind of idea in everybody's mind that this conglomerate is, you know, going to dictate this and all that. And we do sometimes forget that there's humans in charge of this, and these humans we have now spoken to and feel obviously very comfortable with and competent about their knowledge of what they're working with. And the process they had to go through to get this was one of the clearest things for me of how badly they want this, because 6 months of pushing their idea and having certain people at the table that are obviously high flyers in Amazon, but also in other realms of Tolkien, and all the different people that they had to not impress, but work with, convince, you know, whatever it was. So like the hard work was done. They then talked about how much freedom they had. So they did the hard work to get that post, and then once they got it, it was very hands off, and their creativity was their own, and how freeing that was to not be under, you know, like a 90-minute studio film. It has to be done in this amount of time. It was much more open than that, which was very refreshing to hear.
Yeah. Brogner was just asking how old are the showrunners. Younger than me is the answer.
I think they're the same age as me. When they were talking about being in uni and the film's coming out, I was like,
there were some they were talking about their lives and experiences, and I was like, I put them at 5 to 10 years younger than me. Yeah, I
think they're about my age.
Yep. Oh man, it was so there was something else I was just gonna. Okay, hang on. Let's it's Emily is asking on YouTube, did they listen to the Tolkien Professor as teenagers? One of them was a listener. That was a really fun moment for me. It was Patrick McKay. There were two little stories that I think I can tell, because they weren't about the content or anything. In the lobby afterwards, we were kind of standing in a circle, kind of two circles around, the two of them, in kind of a ring of people asking questions and stuff. And there was, I kind of was approaching the people who were talking to Patrick at the moment, and but there was a space right next to him, so I kind of stood, right at his right hand, where there was a little spot. And after a while, I was asking a question, and then I paused in the middle of my question. I'm like, "Oh, hang on, I'm like, sorry, and I started to introduce myself, and he interrupted me and said, "I know who you are." And I was like, okay. And then the other story was, I was talking to another person who I can't tell you who it is. But anyway, I was talking to another person involved in the production who told me a story that at one point on set, they were talking about Balrogs, and the issue of Balrog wings came up. And she was telling me that she and Patrick were both saying that, like, well, we know what the Tolkien Professor would say about this. So they were joking about Balrog wings in connection with my podcast. So we'll see.
That's the kind of dedication we want to see.
That's it. People who had done their homework. So it was funny.
I've been thinking about it a lot since we left too, of like what should have been done differently, like purely in a management side, if I was in charge of this. And the only thing I could come up with was we should have had a full episode, because we just had clips, which we're not going to talk about.
It would have been nice to get a sense of how the story goes.
Yeah, I don't feel like we keep talking about the showrunners, because that's what the importance of that session was. It was like, we need to match minds and have confidence and optimism. The actual footage.
Matt from Nerd of the Rings is here. Hi, Matt.
Hi, Matt. But the actual footage, pretty. But there's not much to discuss yet. Like, we could pick it apart scene by scene, moment by moment, but like, that's not what we're here for, and we can't yet anyway. But like, we didn't have a full episode, and it's a shame we didn't have that, because I feel like that would give us more to move into. But I don't think that was their impetus to start. I think it was more like, this crowd, this room needs to just have the confidence and the optimism, and we got it.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it seems so strange, and I never would have guessed this necessarily, but I totally could, like, I'd feel exactly the same way if I had not seen a frame of extra footage.
Yeah.
I would. I don't think. I mean, I liked it. I was glad to see it. I was very interested in many of the things that I saw. But I would be singing the same tune about this show if I hadn't seen it as I am now. So
yeah, the footage wouldn't have swayed us one way or the other. It was just nice to see, but the rest of it was necessary.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been reported. I don't think it's a secret. It was about 20 minutes of total footage that we saw. It wasn't just like totally disjointed. I mean, we saw several whole scenes, so we were able to get a sense of. By the way, this is more your world than mine, Maggie, and I'm pretty easy to please on this level. But I thought the acting was really good.
Yeah, again, we didn't have a ton to work off of, but nothing struck me as acting. It felt very natural. So yeah, I thought all of it was good. And I love that this isn't an overshare either, because we can all see the cast list. There's no giant names on there. It's all fresh faces and a lot of like stage experience and things like that, which I feel like brings a lot of subtlety to a performance, and also a lot of like gravitas and a really nice thing to see in something like this. So yeah, I thought it was great.
Yeah, and can I just say, I've heard I often hear some people complain about, like, there's some people who haven't liked the images, the still images or the trailer footage we've seen of young Elrond, right? I'm ready to fight. I love Elrond. I think that it's, so from everything that I've seen, one of my favorite characters so far. I'm a huge fan of their Elrond. Yeah, praise. Great question. Did we get any of the score? Yes. Yes, we did. Holy cow. Really good. Really
Beautiful.
Good. It's yeah. Common question. Does it feel like Middle Earth? Yes, it did. Yeah. It really did. Both the visuals and the score. The score, I think, more than anything else, I think is likely to create that. That was something, I forget who it was, Sean Marchesi maybe, commented on it right after the footage ended, saying that that was one of his responses, was that it seemed to create that kind of like he felt that it did a really good job. This was his observation. This is a citation by me. His observation was that he felt that the music that we heard did a great job of kind of connecting. On the one hand, it sort of was kind of rooted in the the score that we're used to, the music that we're used to associating with Middle Earth. But it was not just a repeat, it was not just a clone. It really kind of emerged from it. Anyway, the music was powerful.
Really beautiful.
Yeah. Tomas, it's hard to tell because we only saw bits. But is it up to Jackson movie standards? My initial impression is, I think it's possible. Again, hard to draw firm conclusions, but
yeah, and that's tough because we're measuring one against the other, which is always a rough thing to do. But I think in terms of like expectation, so if let's not compare it to Jackson, but say Middle Earth, I can definitely see, feel, hear all of it from Middle Earth.
Yeah. I definitely. Yeah, it was definitely Middle Earthy. Now, one thing that's going to be interesting, that I think is going to strain, well, not strain, but it could be. I mean, it's that people need to be sort of prepared for, and we've already seen it. We've seen it in the trailers, right? We've seen in the trailer already that they are going to places that the Lord of the Rings films didn't go to, geographically, I mean. Like they're going to be they are exploring white spaces on the map. We saw clips in the trailer that were clearly not geographically in the zone where all of the action in the Lord of the Rings films and the Lord of the Rings story itself takes place. And so therefore there are going to be some places which are going to be different, right? Which are not going to be like what we're used to seeing in Middle, because we're going to be seeing a different part of Middle Earth than we've ever seen before. So that's really interesting. That's really cool. I think that's people need to remember that. People need to remember that when if you're looking for like the same look and feel of the same look and feel as the Jackson films, right? It's not going to be always the same look and feel because it's going to be a completely different place, than you're getting there. So you can't just go into it with that expectation. But yeah, Jaron Pack says that, hi, Jaron. John Howe just shared in an interview with Empire that there's going to be elves on the oceans. Yeah. Exactly. John Howe's involved. So again, like, is it going to feel, is it gonna have a touchstone, right? With yeah, sure, but it's not going to be identical by any means. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. Let's see. Let's play a game. Let's play let's cite worries and anxieties that people have been expressing on social media for the last few months. And then I'll tell you whether I still share them. This is, by the way, how I'm trying to, I want to give you guys as substantive an input as I can. I'm not going to break the rules. I'm trying to play within the rules as much as I can. But I want to, my goal, I would love to convey as firmly as possible as I could. If I could somehow make you guys feel as confident and happy about this as I feel, I would. So this is my yeah.
And like, this is all laying foundations. Like, as soon as they start letting us reveal more detail, we'd be like, okay, remember when we talked about this? Here's what we were talking about.
Yes, exactly. Here's some details. So yeah, so I'm not going to be, I believe that I can, because all of these things I was told I could give my impressions, right? And these are all just my impressions, right? My impressions and my feelings. So I'm not going to be able to back it up with data, right? I'm not going to be able to make observations to support it. But I can give those things. So, and feel free, by the way, please post questions and concerns that you had, and I'll give my answers, like, how do I feel about that now, right? So, number one, they're just trying to make a Game of Thrones clone. So they're going to do to Lord of the Rings, they're going to like twist Lord of the Rings to make it look and feel like Game of Thrones. So it's going to be like, horrible and violent and like depressing and full of like treachery,
nudity
and nudity and things like that. No, I don't think I convey how emphatically I am not worried about that. I am
and how quickly that was nixed.
That fear was allayed very quickly. Yes, in the process. I am not worried that they are going to try to do it in the mode and in the feel and with like the themes and atmosphere of Game of Thrones. It's not going to be that. And again, that's been a fear, right? That like basically Game of Thrones has kind of set the bar, right? That other streaming services are trying to imitate, right? They're trying to find the next Game of Thrones. And so there has been concern, which is not an illogical concern, or it's not an irrational concern, that they're going to try to lean so much into we're trying to capture the Game of Thrones audience that they're, gonna not do something which is in its heart and spirit true to Tolkien, and instead do it in the Game of Thrones spirit, which, whatever you think of Game of Thrones, is, you have to acknowledge, is very different from the spirit of Tolkien's works. Not worried about that. Not worried about that at all. That it's going to have lots of nudity and sex scenes. Not worried. Not worried about that at all. Not worried about that at all. Yes, so JJ, exactly. When they say the next Game of Thrones, they're talking about popularity, epic scope. I am 100% confident they are not talking, like, you're referring to quotes that have been brought out before about
an
how,
epic scope is the one I would focus on. Like, I think of that very much as a media artifact. This is what we want to create. We want the next Game of Thrones in terms of like, this blew everybody's mind and it got people into fantasy that were never into fantasy. So that's the kind of thing that I think this would draw.
Do I get a sense of how well they're handling the languages, even just pronouncing names correctly? Very well. Very well. I will say I certainly do not know. I'll be stronger than that. I know for a fact that you can be confident that they will that will be at least as good here as it was in the Peter Jackson films. I think that's
See,
fair.
asterisk here will say more soon.
Asterisk will tell you more later, but feel very confident
I can
about
see you
that.
biting your tongue like.
Yes, I'm trying to be careful. I'm trying to. I want to follow the rules. I'm not trying to be a rebel here. And again, honestly, actually, kind of footnote to me wanting to follow the rules. I'm wanting to follow the rules not because I was forced or because I was bribed, but because, again, for me, it was one of the really positive effects. I also enjoyed spending time with the Amazon people. Like a bunch of the Amazon marketing people were there with us, like touring Oxford, and I had one of the Amazon people in my punt when we were punting on the river. Anyway, it was good to get to know them and to just kind of. It was able to kind of come a little bit more into sympathy with what they're trying to do and how they're trying to achieve things. I mean, I have no objections to, like, I would like to see their marketing campaign succeed for this show. So anyway, just a little.
And I got the feeling, like with most things, you kind of get the feeling that you're getting a line. And I guess
Yes.
I'd still be very curious to see what their conversations were around the boardroom table before they had this event with us. But I don't feel like it would be all that different from the conversation we had with them, because none of them are actors either,
Yeah.
and I didn't get the feeling that any of them were touting out lines to us, or they were told that they couldn't talk about anything with us. It felt like humans hanging out and having a good, nice day, and the more I don't want to be a broken record about it, the more I keep thinking about it, it did just feel like a curation. Like, we just want to be careful about when we release things, because,
Right. And I
that
can
was not
respect
done
that.
yet.
I can respect that. I mean, I have no problem with the again, we're, I mean, and I want to be explicit, not just about our not being shills or whatever. I want to be explicit about, like, the agreement that we had. I actually asked their permission to talk about the NDA itself, right? To say, like, it's that because you guys know that we had to sign it. I mean, that's not a secret, right? And, but I just want to say, like, I am not under any restrictions that make me in any way uncomfortable. Like, it's everything that they've asked us has been completely reasonable. And I have felt it's been in goodwill and in a good spirit. And I've been totally comfortable with that whole thing all the way through.
I still think they should have released more earlier, because there was way too long for unknown speculation based on us having nothing. Whereas all of a sudden we're all like, oh, this is fine. If they had done this, 8 months ago, it'd be very different creative space we're all in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Other questions I had. Sorry, I'm
laughing at this one from JJ. How badly have you been haunted by Christopher Tolkien's ghost for daring to say anything positive? Not that. Not that. I think haunted.
If Christopher Tolkien's ghost is haunting anyone, I'm pretty far down his list. I think so maybe I'm just lucky so far. Maybe it will still come. But anyway. Okay, let's see. Other doubts or fears that I've heard and that I can say what I think about now. Someone was asking about the fear of praise, the fear of CG being abused, instantly, instead of practical effects. Not very concerned. Fairly. This is one of the things that we can't talk about, but we did hear from somebody who was talking about the physical effects and sets, and was really one of the things that you hear fans of the Peter Jackson films say all the time, right? I mean, like, come on, how many of you here watched all of the appendices documentaries of the Peter Jackson films, like, over and over, right? And how many of you have had your love and respect for those films informed by that sense of loving attention to detail, in all of the set building and prop building and costuming and everything else like that, right? I do not have the impression that has been less here.
Yeah.
I think that when that stuff is revealed, and I'm hoping, I don't have any information on whether there's going to be a similar kind of documentary set about the making of this show, but I sure hope there will be. And if they're not planning to, I'm preparing to advocate for it pretty strongly that they think about doing it. I hope that there will. And I believe that when there is, that people will be really pleased by what
I
they
think
see there.
if there was, it would only be to their credit, and exactly like you said, so many of us found a deeper and longer lasting love with the Jackson trilogy because of all those documentaries, and we could see their passion, we could see ourselves in their passion. So aligning ourselves with them, which I think is very much what these showrunners have the power to do, that they are showing that they are part of our community already. Now everybody needs to see that, and once they are able to start sharing that with us, it'll be very powerful.
Yes. Okay, let's try to I'm going to try to address the rights question. Here's what I think I can say about the rights question. And honestly, for me personally, nothing else other than these two things needs to be said. Thing number one, they have said, like the Amazon people in general have said again and again, that the rights that they have cover The Lord of the Rings plus the appendices and The Hobbit. That's been publicly said on many occasions, and no one has wavered from that. It is also known, and I have heard it confirmed, that they have been working with representatives, high up, intimate representatives of the Tolkien estate throughout the process. That's all I need to know. Like, those two things are all I need to know, right? When they say they now, again, we've talked about this before. You guys have heard me talk about this lots, and most of you know Tolkien's works well enough to know that of the things publicly released already, several things are obviously from the Silmarillion or from Unfinished Tales, right? There were names on the map when the map was first released way back when, right? The very first thing that they released. There were names on that map, including, of course, almost all of the names on the Isle of Numenor that are only listed in Unfinished Tales. You cannot get those things out of the appendices of The Lord of the Rings. Similarly, like, hello, Tyrion and the trees in the first still image that they released, right? Also, notably, I mean, yeah, it's alluded to in The Lord of the Rings, but still, the way that the rights deals used to be enforced, the fact that the trees of Valinor get mentioned in the appendices would not have given Peter Jackson the freedom to depict the trees of Valinor in the movies, right? Like, that's, I feel confident that would not have flown with certain members of the Tolkien family who may or may not be haunting people at this point, as JJ was asking about. But again, like, so, like, there's no reason to be concerned that. So on the one hand, do I think, are they going to be doing a full-on adaptation of the Silmarillion? No, like, they've said their rights don't extend to that, and I see no reason to think they're lying about that. But at the same time, the things they have already revealed make it clear that the boundaries around that are not, like, absolutely hard and fast. Right. But again, I'm not worrying about the rights because they are working with the Tolkien estate. So I guess what this means, right? As far as, like, what we're thinking about, it means when you're thinking about what might or may not be in the show, it's not okay. It's like, on the one hand, you should not be allowing yourself to be thinking about, and again, here, I'm not speaking about anything I saw in the sneak peek. This is just my reasoning based on the things that they've said, and on the things they've already released. We don't indulge fantasies that they're going to tell the whole Turin Turambar story, right? By the way, no, I do not know. I do not know what that broken black sword is. I don't have inside information about what that broken black sword is. Just in case, Don't ask. I don't know. And even if I did, I couldn't tell you. But again, don't indulge yourself into thinking they're going to tell the whole Turin Turambar story or the whole, like, you know, story of the Dagor Bragollach or something like that. Like, it's not going to happen. They said they don't have rights to the Silmarillion, and I believe them, right? But at the same time, don't think that there are a lot of fans who have been acting like amateur lawyers, right? You know, rights lawyers on this front, and being like, well, they can't do that because that's not in the... Dude, neither are the names of the on the Isle of Numenor, neither are the, you know, the trees are not, you know, so just like know that the Tolkien estate is working with them closely, and they have gotten permission for everything that they're doing. And they have clearly, again, manifestly from what they've released so far, they've gotten permission for some stuff that is outside the appendices. They've gotten permission to do some things with stuff that's in the appendices that, you know, in the older days, in previous deals, they might not have gotten, based on my experience with working within these kinds of rights deals. So, yes. But
I also like the fact that they made it so clear that there was plenty for them to work with. You know,
There's totally plenty for them to work with. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the rights just became kind of a non-issue because what they are working with it's just not dependent on the specifics of what I think some people are looking for. They have plenty.
Yeah. Exactly. And, you know, the other thing is to keep in mind, we're talking about the Second Age here, right? So, I mean, the majority of what they're doing is stuff
Unwritten.
that Tolkien didn't write. Yeah, exactly. I mean, by necessity, the majority of the story they tell is going to be stuff that's not plot written by Tolkien. And this, somebody else had a question about like balance of known characters and new unknown characters. I'm not worried about that. I'm completely comfortable with that. I'm trying to think if there are any, do I have any worries about them cutting major name characters that I'm going to miss? And I don't think I do. I'm not saying that I know for a fact they're not going to cut anybody that I'm going to, you know, lament their absence. But I have no positive evidence to be worried about that. Everyone we asked about, it seemed to be that they had ideas for. Because again, the thing to keep in mind, we're talking about the Second Age, right? So we have this small number of characters who we know to be there, right? Who we know sort of need to be there for the main, you know, Tolkien's main story. I don't see any reason to believe that they don't have plans for all of those major characters. But step back for a moment and ask yourself, you take that group of people together, who's missing, right? What do we not get from that group of characters, Tolkien's Second Age characters? And the answer is anybody who's not king, right? I mean, it's a in a sense, it would read like a historical annal, right? You know, like, let's talk about what the kings and rulers were doing in the big picture political stuff, right? We don't meet, you know, not only do we not meet, you know, like, what were the humans, the non-Numenorian humans doing in Middle-earth? What was their life like, right? What about the elves who were not Noldor, not under the High King of the Noldor? What about the Sylvan elves in Middle-earth at this time, right? What were they doing? What about again the Harfoots, which I see no reason to think that there would not have been descent. We don't know exactly when hobbits began. I see no reason to think that they didn't begin back in the Second Age, and lots of reasons to think that they might have. What were they up to? What were they doing? And if we're going to answer any of those questions, if the story is going to be interested in any of the, heck, we don't even know, like, what's the average elf on the street doing, right? All we get is like Galadriel and Celebrimbor and Gil-galad and Elrond and Celeborn. Like, that's it, right? What about again, what about the elf on the street? Who knows, right? So they have to, if they want to tell a story about anybody but the kings and rulers, they have to invent new characters, because Tolkien didn't. He wasn't telling those stories. I
feel like we could do a whole episode just on like world building in general, just not specific to our London experience and this episode. Just, I mean, like what one has to do to build a believable world. And so much of that is about like interactions and economy and language and class and all these like really big socioeconomic structures. And you have to have thought through all of those things in order for a fantastic world, a fictional world, to function. Like any creative writer will be able to tell you that. So you can assume, like Peter Jackson, that one would put the same work into this. And I would say, my nerves were calmed there, that I have no concerns in that field anymore.
Yeah, no, exactly. JJ says, shocking twist, Amazon makes Celeborn the main hero of the Second Age. Okay, JJ, I think I can say this. I asked about Celeborn. I asked Patrick about Celeborn, and my question was something along the lines of, are you gonna show what Galadriel saw in this guy, right? Like why they get married? And he laughed. I can't tell you anything else, but again, like even that, like he understood why that was a funny question. Like again, like he totally gets it. Like he has the same, the same questions, the same thoughts that we have, and that we had. I see people asking about Anarion specifically. Honestly, that's one of my big questions. We know Isildur's in it. That's been talked about. We've not heard anything about Anarion. I'll tell you, frankly, I have no more information about that than anybody else. I know I've not seen anything one way or the other about that, whether they're going to include Anarion. I kind of hope for Anarion, but I don't know. I mean, I will also say, just kind of thinking, putting my SilmFilm hat on, Nick Palazzo from SilmFilm is here as well. Putting my SilmFilm hat on, I know, like, it's hard to, like, sometimes you have to compress characters. Sometimes you need to, when we talk about it in SilmFilm, we talk about, like, what's this character's job in this season, in this show, like,
moving things forward.
What is the there has to be a reason to have him. We can't just include people, because they were mentioned in the text, right? I mean, if we're going to try to make them a character, there has to be a point to them in the story, right? They have to really contribute something, or else they don't deserve the screen time, right? They don't deserve the diffusion of the viewer's attention, right? Because in this way, it's a different thing. You can get away in a book with like listing names, right? Or telling us in one paragraph. So anyway, it's different. I don't know, but there do come times when you can say, okay, we've got two minor characters here that do these two different things. Both of those jobs could be accomplished by one single character. So let's kind of compress those and make them one character. That kind of thing happens all the time in adaptations, and it's a given, and sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it's a bad decision, but often it does work. And we, as people who are like, oh, but I like that character, we just have to kind of deal with that, and kind of.
As a viewer, it often makes sense. Like, we don't have as much time with a film to get to know all the characters. So if you're dealing with 105 characters from a book and you can narrow that down to 25 for a film, I'm way more likely to remember those 25.
Right. Exactly. So anyway, I don't have any information about Anarion. I mean, I don't know. I have no idea whether he's in or out. I guess what I'm doing here is preparing for the possibility that he might be out, because I've not heard him confirmed. And so I don't know. But I agree. I mean, my own vote, I would like to have him there, because I do agree. I think I would argue, if I were, in the writer's room, I would argue that his death in the Battle of Dagorlad that's a significant role. And it needs to be separate from Isildur, and it needs to be separate from Elendil. I think that his getting his skull crushed, I think that plays an important role that I would want to myself, I would want to retain. But of course, there have been times, and again, as Nick can back me up from SilmFilm perspective, when I've started off saying I would really like to do that, and then as we worked into really kind of working out what it would look like, I'm like, actually, we don't have time to do that. We've got to, change our minds about that and, and redo that in some ways. Anyway, so I have no idea about Anarian, but we'll see. We'll see. Okay. Other questions?
Loads of questions about CGI, and I mean, there were people talking about CGI. The Super Bowl commercial, I guess there were bits that were a little bit twee for me, which, just a little bit cheesy. You could tell with CGI, but there was nothing that really like put me off or made me feel disgusted. I feel like there's a real dramatic reaction to some of the CGI that I'm like, yeah, there's trolls in Middle Earth and they don't exist in real life. So yes, we have to create them, and right. Maybe it doesn't look quite how you thought it would look. And
presumably,
I don't know. There's a certain level of grace I'm going to give CGI anyway. And when it does look cheesy, I do get annoyed because it takes me out of the narrative. So like, I get people being annoyed by bad CGI. I can't say any of it stuck out to me in what we saw, but it's not a huge concern for me. That's where I think I'll land with this. Like, I think I'm more distracted by the other nice things that I saw, that a moment of bad CGI is not going to ruin anything for me.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I have to admit also, my, when the title trailer came out, there were a lot of people saying, oh man, CGI is so bad, right? It's so cheesy. And I don't think about CGI a lot. I have a pretty robust faculty for suspending disbelief. So like, I'm very willing.
That's a great way to phrase it. I have a robust faculty for suspending my belief. I need to write that down.
I'm easy. Like
it's so true.
I am ready to enter into a secondary world that's made. I have to get like shoved out of it, right? Like I'm ready. I'm ready. So I'm not one who's sitting there being like,
taking apart
a really tense critic, about the CGI. So on the one hand, so a lot of times when people are like, oh, the CGI, I'm like, don't notice, don't care, like I'm fine. But again, so I'm aware that there's like a pretty big gap between like my tolerance and other people's tolerance, and that's fine. But my sense of that, and honestly, like my respect for that, dropped a lot after the reactions to the title trailer, where I heard a lot of those people who seem to care about the CGI a lot talking about how cheesy the CGI was, only to find out there was no CGI involved at all, like at any point in that. And I'm like, okay, so like all of you people who are complaining about the CGI, and it made me think, well, gosh, I wonder, I bet you that there are some of the elements that people were saying, oh, the CGI on the trailer was really corny, which might also turn out not to be CGI after all.
Right.
Anyway, I actually think that's, again, coming back to that other question about like the, or rather the original way that this question was framed, do we have worries about, CGI versus, physical stuff? I think they're doing a lot of physical stuff. I mean, I think that, a very great deal of money has been spent. Where do you think they're spending it? Right?
I could list a lot of things here, but I'm going to let that one.
There's a lot of things. but like, I do think one of the places where it's being spent is going to be, I think it's going to turn out that a lot of money is being spent on building things and producing sets and costuming. And like, I don't think they're cutting corners there.
Yeah, because there's absolutely the argument that like bad VFX it can be damning. There's whole YouTube channels that are really fascinating if people want to dive into that. I can't remember the name of these ones, but VFX editors react or something, where they watch bad CGI and talk about it. it's fantastic. But when there's bad CGI, yeah, it totally pulls you out because it's poorly executed.
Right.
This is not the kind of production that would execute something poorly. So that's where I'll leave that. But yeah.
Yeah. I just, it's you know,
oh yeah,
there have been times on social media when I've, like, on the one hand, I'm hearing people say, you know, it's this big budget thing and they're just throwing money at this, and then other people saying like, oh, they're cutting corners, and I'm like, wait, hang on, which is it? Right? Are you spending lots of money, or are you cutting corners? Like, I mean, it's possible to do both, but you have to be, I mean, it's a little bit weird to do both, right? I mean, like, you'd have to be particularly or under some truly bizarre constraints in order to pull off both of those things, right?
And it's nice to see some of the comments here about, like, people got into CG because of Lord of the Rings and Jackson's films. Like, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us are here because of the Jackson films. Like, it was those behind the scenes documentaries that really got me interested in film and analysis and adaptation and all that stuff. So, like, total gateway. So that's brilliant that brought you to this. So you have the same kind of concern for CG that I have for story, because that's what brought you into this. So I get the concern, but it's also just not a concern for me anymore. Like, there might be moments that look cheesy because there aren't trolls in the real world, but you would hope that they're using the facilities they have to make the best troll that they can, or whatever else they need to create. But it didn't smack me in the face as a concern.
Yeah, agreed. So let's see. Meow Indeed was asking, what are my main concerns now? Well, just the uncertainty about the story, right? I mean, I don't know. Like, is it going to come together, right? You know, is the story going to come together and be a compelling story? And that, of course, we won't know until we see it. And which I have a very, well, okay. I have more to judge by now, in that instead of like trailer blips, you know, I saw some I saw a few scenes, right? So I actually saw a little tiny mini chunk of narrative. It doesn't help me with the big overall story. What I saw was encouraging. Encouraging as far as the writing, as far as even just seeing what some of the scenes were about. Like, it was like, okay, this sounds like part of an interesting, non-cheesy story. You know, so I thought that was good. That, coupled with, you know, many of the things that the showrunner said when they were kind of talking about what they're hoping to capture and the kinds of things that they're wanting to do. Again, to bring it back to the showrunners and how impressed I am with them, I will say I feel confident that if they succeed in capturing their vision, I think it's going to be great. I mean, I'm confident, having met with them, talked with them, asked them questions, heard them respond to other people's questions. I don't think either that they're just going to have a lame, silly story. Because I was impressed not only as a Tolkien person, but just hearing them talk, just as a story person, right? Like, hearing them, sometimes they would be asking questions or sort of defending something on the question of, on the issue of, like, how, you know, people asking things like, you know, how is this going to work in the story, or what, and like, but the issue of like what their priorities in their storytelling kind of came across at several points, right? And just hearing those things, I was happy. I was like, yep, it sounds like I can get behind all of those priorities. It sounds like it will be a good story, parenthesis, if it works, right? Assuming that it comes across, because that's what you can never tell. I mean, you know, you listen to an artist talk about what they tried to achieve, and then you look at the work of art, and sometimes there's a gap there, right? So I don't know.
That's a really good comparison. Yeah, because I was thinking about in terms of like building a film team, and you know, the people we know are behind this, with writers and production and all that stuff, and it's a really impressive pedigree, and it sounds like it was a really positive process and a creative process. So it sounds like everything is right in the kitchen, but whether the cake comes out depends on how the ingredients go together, and if you put in the right measure, and, you know, so many different things. But I think they bought all the right ingredients.
Right. Exactly. Rama here, great question. Okay, so here I'm going back to my game. Concerns that the show is heavily grinding a particular political axe, and that it's like this whole show is going to be used. They're using Tolkien as a platform for putting forward a political agenda. Not worried. Not worried. At all. Not worried. Now, that said, I'm not saying it's going to be like completely neutral. Like, it's made by humans, right? And so therefore is not going to be like totally neutral in all ways. Like, there are going to be some decisions they will have had to make, some of which we've seen, right? Like multiracial casting and everything. But, so like we know some of these. And obviously some of these decisions that have to be made are going to be influenced, right, by their convictions and whatever. But do I think that this is just going to be a platform that we're going to be hearing like platforming for particular? No, I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that at all. Yeah. And Nameless Arcanum, you're right. It's not that Tolkien was exactly apolitical himself. Yes, he also was a human being and had some very definite convictions about things, which showed themselves in his work. Now, actually, this reminds me, so like I said, of course, it's not going to be apolitical. Nothing is apolitical. Like, that's just, it's made by humans. So yes, there's going to be, there's going to be some stuff there. But again, is it going to be like propaganda? Again, is it being utilized as a platform to push forward an agenda? No, I do not believe that. I do not believe that at all. Now let's see. There's another. Oh, sorry. There was another question that I was just reminded of.
Well, chat's there. I want to comment on big money can produce big budget mega hits, but almost everything these days lacks a good story. That was my concern coming into this, because you see loads of money being thrown at these things to just get it out. It's all about the amount of content on some of these streaming platforms, and you're just concerned about quality because there's so much that it all just fades into the background because we consume it and then we forget it. That's what I was concerned about, because I don't want Tolkien to be a quick consumption and forget. It's Tolkien. Like, it has to be substantial. And again, we'll get into the details, but this is no longer a major concern because I believe the right things are in the kitchen. Again, I don't know if the finished product is going to be what we all hope it will be, but it's lining up to be as good as it can be, in my opinion, right now. We'll see if that changes when the next thing comes out, but I'm feeling a lot better about it.
Yeah, so definitely.
That was mine.
Oh man, I'm forgetting there was another question.
I gave you all that time while waffling.
I know, and you did, and I still can't. I still can't remember it. Oh well. Okay. Other questions, concerns. I don't think I can tell you. Eternal Vic 14, who my favorite character was in the footage that I saw. That would be revealing too much about what it is that we saw, and I can't do that. Time compression. Yeah, sure. Yeah, well, we can talk about time compression a little bit.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
What has been reported is that, okay. I keep having these self-doubts now when I'm about to say something and I'm like,
well, I was going to start with saying,
Well,
I was going to start with saying, a few episodes ago where we talked about time compression and how it has to happen because we're talking about thousands of years and all these different characters. Like, of course we have to compress it, but there's ways you can do it thoughtfully.
Yes.
I would say we were on the right track with that statement.
Yeah. No, exactly. I mean, I think, and I believe it's been reported, I think in the Vanity Fair article, didn't they say that they talk about the compression there? Am I worried about the time compression? No. And again, I'm not, because again, this was listening to Patrick McKay talk about it in the lobby afterwards. And it wasn't his Tolkien answers. This is one of the places where I was really interested in listening to his storytelling answers. It was this was the part of the conversation, Nick Palazzo, that you would have really, really enjoyed, because he was talking about it from a screenwriting standpoint and talking about, like, you know,
structure,
the art of, you know, of screenplays and storytelling, and how you convey stories to audiences in this way. And he was making some arguments based on that, essentially. Like, that was kind of his answer to the time compression. And by the way, then he went off to say, like, of course, in order for this story to work, we have to accomplish this, and this. We have to convey these things about, like, Numenor and its fall. And I was just like, okay. Okay, good. I'm glad to hear that. And again, like, they get it. They totally get it. I mean, again, like, those this is why my confidence is so high, right? Because if you think about it, almost all the questions we've talked about, like when we were talking about this, right? Our concern when we, you know, several episodes ago, when we were discussing the compression issue, we were saying, well, this was when we were talking with Helen, right? That one of the concerns was, if they don't establish Numenor, you know, as a going concern, and then, you know, like, we're going to lose the tragedy, right? It's not going to feel like it needs to feel. And again, at the end of the day, right, if you think about it, that boils down to, they get Numenor, right? Are they going to get Numenor? Are they going to get what's important about Numenor and why we need to? And I'm because, like, yeah, they get it.
If you don't love it, if it's not beautiful, then there's nothing at risk. There's nothing to lose. Yeah. And yeah, that was, and I think it was said in the chat, so I don't want to just repeat that, but the responses to our questions were often so much more thoughtful and more in depth than we would have expected, but also more in depth than I would have considered. You know what I mean? Like, right. I think we're all thinkers on these questions, and they thought more than I did on most of them. And time compression was definitely one of those where the depth that they went into was, oh my goodness, you know? So
yeah, you're talking about, I mean, it was clear that we were talking to people who not only know Tolkien really well, you know, love Tolkien very much, but have, you know, eaten, breathed, slept Tolkien for 5 years, you know, like, that's,
and everything before that. I mean, right. They're my generation, and they were very quick to share their love of Indiana Jones and Goonies, and, you know, just like all these other just good stories and good adventures, and just things that they grew up on loving. And, you know, we geeked out about a lot of different stuff, and a lot of it was just focused on story and structure and character and these things that you want to connect with somebody about.
Yeah. Oh, I finally remembered the other thing I was going to talk about. The other question that was asked. So again, playing my "Am I Still Worried About It" game. The worry that they are going to do sort of objectionably depart from Tolkien's faith perspective. That's a question I've gotten a bunch of times too. How are they going to handle the sort of Christian elements of the Lord of the Rings? I will say, I was talking about this on Twitter yesterday. I don't feel that I have much direct information on that. It's not a topic that really came up explicitly in our discussions with them. So I don't have any, I don't have much but what I will say, just to kind of approach it from a different direction. So I don't have positive, I don't have positive, but I have negative information. Nothing that was said gave me any concerns. And some of the things, again, going back to my favorite answer that they gave to any question, which was to talk about the themes, right? You know, the themes that are really important in Tolkien that they were trying to capture in the story. Of those themes, several of them were kind of in this category, like themes that are very much that were for Tolkien very much informed by his religious convictions and spiritual background. And again, I do not have do I believe that these guys are going to be really kind of leaning into the religious and Christian element of it? No, I have no reason to believe that. I don't. I'll be very surprised if there is any kind of, overt acknowledgement of anything like that. But here's the thing. Tolkien doesn't overtly do it either, right? I mean, many, many, many people have read The Lord of the Rings without having any idea that Tolkien was a Christian and that it was in some sense a Christian work. Please understand, I'm not saying that I don't think it is a Christian work. It is, but it's not that sort of Christian work, right? It's not Narnia. And therefore, an adaptation is under different... This is a bigger issue, like with Narnia adaptations, for instance, right? I mean, how are you going to handle the Christian stuff is a huge and enormously relevant question when you're doing a Narnia adaptation. For The Lord of the Rings, there is not a single overtly Christian reference character thing. Where is it, right? Now, again, it's not to say that The Lord of the Rings isn't a Christian work, but it's a Christian work deep down at its roots, right? And do I think that they respect those roots, that they respect those themes and ideas which come out of Tolkien's, Catholic perspective and infused his text for that? Do I think that they respect those? Yes, I think they respect those things. So I see no reason to think it's going to be sort of alarming, in that way. Do I think it's going to be like evangelical? No, I don't think it's going to be evangelical, but neither is Tolkien. So why should it be? Anyway, so I did want, that's a question I've gotten a couple times. So I did want to address that. Again, I don't have any actually concrete data about that, but I mean, all I can say is, I am myself a Christian who was, who cares about this stuff in The Lord of the Rings, and I was not like alarmed or perturbed. I didn't have any yellow flags go up at any point on that kind of stuff. We'll see.
I feel like my main takeaway was just reassurance that the right people are in the room. I know I keep saying it, but like that's the main thing I'm falling back on. It just felt like part of our team was there.
Yes.
I still wish we had seen a lot more from the I want to see more because I like the show and I want to see more. Yeah, there's that perspective, but also there's just not a lot for us to work with. I can certainly, I look forward to us being able to share the details that we did see because it was fun, but I think that's my main criticism, that there's just not enough content for us to really dig into reactions of the show. Right. What we are able to dig into are reactions of the creation and the creative process and the creators. Mm-hmm. But that is so much more important to me at this stage. So much more important
to me. Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Like, this is what we need right now. And content's going to start coming. So like, as I start to question what I'm seeing, I'm going to feel better because my baseline is confident.
Yeah.
So like, what does that mean? I don't know, but I know they put the thought into it. Well, what does that mean? I don't know, but I know they did the research, So like, there's going to be a little bit more grace because of where we're coming from.
Yeah. It's sort of like, it's sort of like saying, I didn't have any of my questions answered except for all of my questions. Like that's like every single question I have is now rooted in this basic. I mean, I trust these people. Honestly, I came away with a stronger feeling that they know their stuff and really get Tolkien. I came away with a stronger sense of that from this than I did from the Peter Jackson appendices about Peter Jackson and Philippa Boyens. And now it may be after I see the show, I may have my list of things that I'm just like, how can you read Tolkien and still think that and still do that? Like, come on, that doesn't make any sense. But there are still those moments. Again, I'm not bashing on the Peter Jackson films. I love the Peter Jackson films, but there are a bunch of times in the Peter Jackson films that I'm just like, I'll give you an example, right? And I know it was in a deleted scene, like I know it's only in the extended edition, but I am sorry. If you are going to include a scene where the Witch King of Angmar breaks Gandalf's staff, I'm going to have questions about you and how much you get things, okay? Like, I'm sorry. There is no excuse for that scene. There is no excuse for that scene, and I would
he's ready to go to bat.
I would tell Philippa Boyens that to her face, right? And again, like that kind of a scene, I'm just like, JJ or Aragorn cutting off the head of the messenger at the parley. Yes, like there's a bunch of times things in those movies, and again, things sometimes that they say in the documentaries where I'm just like, that's not. Again, it's not that they don't know. It's not that they're ignorant. It's just like
feel it different.
Feel it very differently, and did not feel like I was in sync with them. And like, and again, so therefore my confidence that they really got Tolkien was imperfect. I had imperfect confidence. That's not a bash, right? Like it's, I trusted them. I was willing to trust them. Therefore, when the Hobbit films were coming out and whatever. But anyway, like but with these guys, there was nothing the whole day. We just had, well, it was significant, probably an hour and a half with them. So it was a significant period of time, but there was not a single thing. There was not a single thing in the that they said that gave me that kind of impression where I was like, wait, hang on. How could you think that? Like, why would you say that? Why would any Tolkien fan say that? I just like, so for me, there was no, who knows? Again, maybe in the show, I'll get a Witch King destroys Gandalf's staff moment, and get mad. Like, I don't know. But,
and I also think it's important to note that, like, we did have the protection of the NDA in that room, and much more restricted were the specifics of what they told us in that room, which means they were totally open and frank, way more honest than we had any right to expect, because they're totally protected, because we can't share it yet, They were so open, because so often when you go to these media junkets and these press events and things like that, there's a media trainer there with the actors and the creators before they go on stage and answer these questions, giving them the prompts and giving them the phrases and giving them the questions and the answers, that you just hear these like canned responses and you don't hear anything authentic. We got none of that. So none of this was media trained material. It was a really frank and open conversation with a creative space, with a creative person in a space where they knew the same thing you did, So it just felt like a meeting of the minds, as opposed to any kind of press or, I don't know, interview situation. Yeah. And so industry-wise, totally different than what you would expect too, which is very cool.
And to try to capture the atmosphere of that, the setup was, so there was one person who was kind of prompting them with some questions to kind of get them started talking about things, and then the two of them would talk. They were constantly digressing, interrupting each other, stumbling over each other, going into this, and then she kept trying to pull them back, and they kept going off in other directions, and it was like, this was not a scripted conversation.
She threw her questions away.
She literally threw her notes over her shoulder. Yeah, exactly. I forgot about that moment. Yeah, she did that.
Well, and that was also quite sweet too, because you could tell that she did not have the Tolkien knowledge. That was not her role. That's not her job. So she was just like trying to lead them into this conversation, and they were like, we got this.
Yeah. No, it was so that was again, I've heard some skeptical responses to the things that we're saying, things like, well, of course they said the right things, this whole thing was arranged to, bring you guys there and then say the right things to you so that you will then go and pass it on. And I get that, that's, yes, in a sense, that's exactly what was happening. But I get what they did and said, you can't fake. And I don't believe that they are good enough actors to have been putting on that show. It's very, and again, you guys know us who were there. Us,
I was gonna say,
the Prancing Pony guys,
this community. If we don't like something, we say it. And you can't get those 25 people to agree on anything, I'm pretty sure. And here we are all saying, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the especially in the lobby, right? The conversations we were having, seeing them. I mean, I was in, the people who were in the little circle with Patrick McKay with me at that one point that I'm remembering right now. It was me, and it was Knew Better, Do Better was right there, right in front of him, coming at him with a whole bunch of things. There was one of the Prancing Pony guys. There was Matt from Nerd of the Rings was there. Will from Will Varking was there. Anyway, there was a bunch of, and we were all just quick pepper questions, and we were geek. It was a geek out. It was a very spontaneous, organically upflowing geek out that was happening there. And again, you don't fake that. Here we go. Will says, he's from the Lord of the Rings on Prime subreddit. Yeah, there you go. That's where you can find Will. Yeah, it was absolutely a nerd moment, Will. Completely. Yeah. Fornad, I don't have any serious worries. Like, I don't have any serious, again, that's not the same as saying, like, you know, hear me now, I predict this show is going to be the best thing you've ever seen. Like, I don't know that, right? I can't say that, and I won't say that. Can I imagine ways in which it could disappoint? Yeah, sure. Again, like, you know, as Maggie was saying about the kitchen and the cake, right? Just because you can see that there are awesome cooks in the kitchen doesn't mean the cake is necessarily going to taste good. Like, things can happen, right? Who knows? But as far as worries, no, I'm not worried at all. I don't have a single worry. Worry is about, like, when you're playing the what if game. Oh, but, like, what if this is not good? And what if they do that? I'm not worried. Like, I'm not worried. Again, like, I don't know it's going to be good, but I am not worried about anything.
I do feel like there's a difference for me from before and after, though, because before I wasn't worried because I'm not spending my life worrying about something I can't control and know nothing about. You know, like, before I wasn't worried because I didn't have anything to worry about. We didn't have any content. We didn't have any information. I didn't know these people. I didn't have anything to worry about.
It was all a benefit of the doubt kind of.
Yeah, it was all fine. Whatever. I don't have to worry about that. Now I'm not worried because those guys got it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's a real big difference there. Like, before it was I'm not worried because I'm disengaged. Now it's I'm not worried because I'm reassured.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. It's hard because, you know, in some ways I feel like it would be super professional to balance it with, like, and yet I retained these grave concerns but I don't. Like, I have to be honest.
I know a lot of people are looking for that, I think. Like, they really want us to say, but here's the thing that's going to suck. Sorry, I don't know that yet.
Exactly. Again, I mean, I will say, like, I don't know how the story is going to come together. And this comes back to the answer that I had to, like, what's my primary concern now? That would be it. You know, is it going to, are the elements going to come together to be a really compelling whole? Is the overarching story going to be compelling? You know, are there going to be some bits that I like, you know, some segments, some, like, areas, some character plot line, you know, some subplots that I'm just like, oh, I can't wait till this scene is over to get back to that other one. Like, all of those things could happen. I don't know. So, like, am I concerned that those things? Yeah, I mean, I would not like to see that. I'm hoping that stuff doesn't happen. And so, though those are still definite uncertainties to me. But I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
And I think the only other thing we're going to keep hearing about is just the Amazon side of it. We're like, yeah, it was great to have this couple of days. And it was really, you know, all stops pulled out. And it was beautiful and it was lovely and really enjoyable. But none of us were paid. None of us were, you know, pranked into doing this. None of us were promised that we would say nice things. And none of us would compromise the community we've built or, you know, the reputations we have or anything like that to be schmoozed by Amazon. You know, like, I don't know. I'm sure it's going to continue. There's nothing we can do about those people. And again, I don't engage, so I'm just not giving them the time of day. But what we say is what we say because we can't act.
Exactly. You can always know that you're getting genuineness from me because I'm pretty much incapable of doing
and
anything
I took
else.
Like the most scrupulous notes. So the second we are allowed to go into detail, we will bring it all out.
Yeah. Absolutely. I can't wait to tell you guys the sentence that JD said that made me cry. That made me cry and fan myself. Yes. I can't wait to tell you guys exactly what that was.
And if I had my phone, I would have documented it, but we had to lock up our phones.
Yeah, that was not permitted. It will not shock you to hear. Anyway. Okay, so we should go. We're out of time here. But thanks for all your questions. This has been a lot of fun. We'll be back again next week, back to our normal time. This was a special thing. I'm traveling again tomorrow. I gotta go help my son in North Dakota. So I'm doing family travel. But I was like, I can't cancel Other Minds and Hands this week. Like we totally have to have it. So we shifted it to a different day to make sure that we could have one this week, even though I'm going to be out of town tomorrow. So thanks everybody. We should be back with some more fun guests. We'll probably, bring in some of our compatriots from the London trip. And then, and we'll talk about some more stuff next week. So thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye now.
Bye.